Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Tenpenny Files. I'm your host, Dr. Sherri Tenpenny. The Tenpenny Files has daily conversations to inform and educate, not just to entertain. I come prepared, and we let the discussion unfold naturally with people worth hearing and topics certainly worth exploring. If it matters to your body, your freedom, or your future, we talk about it here. Every day, I talk with authors, documentary filmmakers, and independent thinkers whose messages challenge the mainstream thinking. We have a wide range of topics, so there's something here for everybody. We talk about government, politics, vaccines, vaccine health policy, food, farming, fitness, pets, travel, and once a week we talk to pastors and authors about faith and biblical principles. My goal is to introduce you to topics that you've never heard of before and have conversations on topics you always wish you wanted to explore, but you didn't know where to start. Let our guests here show you the way through their books, through their writings, and through the things that they are challenged to do. Let them show you the way. Join me daily, Monday through Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern at the Tenpenny Files, where we hear from voices who've often been ignored, silenced, or censored, but truly have something important to say. But before we begin, I want to invite everybody who's listening to become a Tenpenny Prime member. Prime members receive an exclusive monthly white paper and a recorded presentation that I do both of those. And then as part of your monthly membership, you have access to an Ask the Expert masterclass. These are always very, very good, and you can buy them individually if you're not a member, but it's actually less expensive and saves you money to become a member. To find out more, go to primemembership.drtenpenny.com, primemembership.drtenpenny.com, learn more, and hopefully support our work. And one last thing, I want to give a shout out to all of our regulars who've been following these great conversations with us. And with the introduction I do every day, it's because we're growing rapidly and we always have new people and new guests. So welcome to all the currently new listeners, and I'm very grateful for our regulars. Now, let's get started. Today's conversation is with author, researcher, and child advocate dedicated to exposing the dark side of the medical establishment, Jeanice Barcelo, about her new and very important book, The Dark Side of Prenatal Ultrasound, the only book that exposes the dangers of the ultrasound technologies. Jeanice, thank you so much for being here today. Welcome to the Tenpenny Files.
Dr. T, I'm so glad to be here and thank you for the opportunity to share this information. I have been censored severely since 2014 with the publication of my first book about birth trauma. So it's great to be able to get this information out to more people. Thank you for having me on.
How did you get interested in researching all of this information about prenatal ultrasounds? And for the listener, I have read most of this book, and actually, we're going to have a part 2 about this book because it's nearly 500 pages, loaded with information. It's like you want to take a yellow highlighter and highlight almost every sentence in this book. It's very well written, easy to follow, and loaded with information. How did you get interested in prenatal ultrasounds?
I first became interested in the topic of birth trauma. And so I started writing a book about birth trauma in 2013. And I was going to include a chapter about the problems with prenatal care. I knew at that time that ultrasound was a bit of an issue. And so I was just going to include a little blip about prenatal care and ultrasound. And I jumped into a rabbit hole extremely deep with the topic of ultrasound. And I said, this is a separate book. Let me finish the birth trauma book, which I did. And then for the next 5 years, I did the research about ultrasound. And there's still more. Like, I just want to hold up my book so that people can see. Um, this is not a skinny book.
Right.
And this is part 1,
Wow.
because there's so much information about the dangers of this technology that we have been lied to about in the most deceptive and evil way. And the harm to our children has been happening since 1970 with the introduction of this technology. So we're now 75 years into exposing developing babies, and we can see all the autism. We can see the ADHD. We can see the genetic damage that's happening, especially in the autistic children with 72, on average, 72 genetic mutations in these children. And those are not spontaneous the way the medical establishment says that they are. They're radiation-induced genetic mutations. And these, of course, will carry on if the children are able to reproduce, which many of them aren't because they're infertile or sterile from the radiation exposure. And we can see from 1970 on the decline in our ability to reproduce. Like right now, the birth rate is tanking. Men have at least 60% less sperm than they did in 1970. And that's because ultrasound stops sperm production. And of course, the wireless radiation, I include the wireless stuff in this book because these are interconnected technologies. This is all radiation. And it does cause sterility amongst many, many other problems.
Well,
And
don't
go
you know
ahead.
that that's just it's a contributor because not every baby that's born, even though almost I think every baby is exposed to at least one ultrasound. That
Mhm.
they do it, early on, maybe to determine the sex of the baby or sort of the estimated age, weight, and give a delivery date. And not every single baby is infertile from the ultrasounds. But I do believe that I agree with what the research that you've done, that it's a contributing factor. But we've also got COVID jabs and vaccines that we now give to mothers and, all the environmental stuff, the microplastics. And we know that the global infertility rate really is tanked all over the world, even below replacement levels. So do you think this is just one more element that's contributing to infertility?
I honestly think it is the driving force. I mean, the COVID jab is a major problem because it contains wireless technology. People are being injected with nanotechnology, a self-assembling wireless system in their bodies. So they are walking wireless transmitters and receivers, and they're pumping huge amounts of radiation through their bodies and into our environment because of what they've been injected with. The radiation, you know, the vaccines in general, what we don't haven't been told is that ultrasound opens the blood-brain barrier. They're using it to blow holes in the blood-brain barrier to deliver their pharmaceutical payloads. Okay, so if you expose a pregnant woman to ultrasound and then jab her, then those toxins that are in the jab are going to go directly into the brain. And it's a nice little highway that they've created to do maximum damage to the brains of the children. And we can see also the intellectual capacity of our children is diminishing rapidly. The IQ levels are tanking. We have 16-year-olds with dementia. They call it digital dementia, which I've written about in my book. You'll come across that as you read on. So we have a very severe form of brain damage because between the ultrasonic radiation and the microwave radiation from the wireless grid, the brains are being cooked. They're shriveling up like bacon, quite literally. And the media try to make light of this fact that the children's brains are shrinking. But this is not something that we should take lightly. There is a reason that this is happening, and there is a reason for the infertility, and there is a reason for the genetic damage. And the main driving force is the radiation. I can't blame it all on ultrasound because we are surrounded by wireless radiation, and all of it is called non-ionizing. Okay, they keep saying non-ionizing radiation is safe. Well, it's not. It's never been safe. It's I think actually more damaging than ionizing radiation, like with X-rays, because X-rays you get a split-second shot. Okay, with ultrasound you can have a 45-minute scan, or you can be strapped with an ultrasonic fetal heart monitor during labor for hours or even days, right? And you can be exposed to wireless radiation chronically for 24/7. So how are we expecting our civilization to continue when we know that radiation causes massive, massive harm? Genetic, fertility, brain, all the organ systems, the eyes, the ears, these children, these autistic children are constantly going like this because they can hear the ultrasound. You see, they hear it. They hear it in the womb, and they tend, there's evidence to indicate they're dissociating from the terror in the womb, the terror of the noise.
We've been taught in medical school that ultrasound are just, they're benign sound waves. They just pass right through and they just really don't do anything. That's what we've been taught. And that's why when people say, well, just get an ultrasound, thinking that it's a much but more benign procedure than a CAT scan or something like that. But your research
Well, yeah.
describes this as something different, and that the machines that generate the ultrasounds are dangerous. Describe that a little bit.
If you take a transducer, let me explain first how they generate ultrasound so you understand what's going on inside the machine when they're using it, okay? To generate ultrasound, they take a quartz crystal and they put alternating currents on the crystal. And the crystal begins to morph and deform and expand and contract at the rate of millions or billions of times per second in response to the electroshock torture of the crystal. And the crystals, in their expansion and contraction, push and pull the air around them. And this is what creates the ultrasound. Really, it's the crystals are screaming. Crystals are living beings. They grow very slowly over many millennia, but they're alive. And they are making sounds of being tortured, which is what the ultrasound is. That's really what it is. Our cells are also crystalline. Our blood is crystalline. Our cerebral spinal fluid is crystalline. We have crystals in our ears, right? Calcium crystals in our ears. Our bodies are crystalline in nature, and so our bodies are also responding to these frequencies. The cells expand and contract and expand and contract, and sometimes they blow apart. So, in a nutshell, you have a cell, this is our current understanding. You have a nucleus in the center of the cell carrying the genetic information. Okay. You have electrons that spin around the nucleus. And when you hit them with ultrasound, the electrons can get knocked out of their orbits. The electrons can get knocked out of the atom entirely, out of the cell, or the nucleus of the cell can be destroyed. And there's output that happens when these cells are traumatized like this. And there's three levels. They respond with non-ionizing or ionizing or nuclear radiation, depending on the level of the assault. We are emitting radiation from the trauma of being hit with these frequencies. And that trauma response is being harvested and recycled to generate this grid. We are the source that's pumping out this energy that is actually life destroying. And when you do this to a developing baby, obviously it's especially damaging in early pregnancy because this is a time of rapid cell division. And if you mess up the cells and you happen to damage the nucleus of a cell with the radiation, those damaged cells can multiply, right? Through cell division, they're going to multiply and you're going to have a genetically damaged child. So early pregnancy is the worst possible time to be exposed to this technology, but there is no good time Dr. T, to be exposed to this technology, especially for a developing baby.
No, I remember seeing, and that was one of the reasons I was so fascinated and wanted to read your book and then have a conversation with you, your book, The Dark Side of Prenatal Ultrasound, because I remember seeing ultrasound like videos, and you could see when they were doing the ultrasound, the baby was like, putting their arms up and trying to move away.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, this ultrasound is just beating on them, and it's just like taking a little ball bat to them. Is there a difference in strength and intensity of the ultrasound? And if there is, why do they use such high intensity frequencies?
Malevolence, an attempt to harm the children. I'm going to be very direct, okay? In the same way that you can use electroshock torture to wipe the memory of people, you can use ultrasound to wipe the genetic memory of people. In terms of the levels, I'll explain that in a minute. Make sure I come back to it. But a Russian scientist named Dr. Peter Geryaev did a study where if you put a DNA molecule in an aqueous, a water solution, it makes a melody. It creates a melody of sound. And when you expose that DNA molecule to ultrasound, it creates one monotonous note. And he explained that a tremendous amount of genetic information has been lost. This is why children don't know if they're male or female. Okay, their genetic understanding from the creator is being deliberately wiped with this radiation. So this is very, very, very serious what's happening. And the mitochondria, which carries the whole memory of the female line, is being totally destroyed with ultrasound as well. I'll explain this in part 2 of my book when we go into the autism thing. Now, in terms of the levels, in the 1980s, a very solid, important scientist, Doreen Liebeskind, did a study on ultrasound, and what she found is a single exposure causes the same level of genetic damage as 89 rads of ionizing radiation. And that is the equivalent of 250 X-rays. A single exposure is causing the same level of genetic damage as 250 chest X-rays. I wanted to try to find the images. Oh, that's the other thing, growth retardation. But that was in the 1980s. They knew in the 1980s that it was causing genetic damage. Then in the late 80s or early 90s, the FDA did a study on about 2,000 children in Denver, Colorado. And they found that ultrasound is causing fetal growth retardation and low birth weight. This is why we have so many low birth weight babies, because the radiation is stunting their growth. That's one of the least, severe things that's happening. So after they find this out, what did the FDA do? They turned around and raised the output limits on the ultrasound machines 8 to 15 fold,
Wow.
so that the children that were born after 1991 or 92 were exposed to at least 8 times as much radiation as the children born prior to that time. Now, keep in mind, this is the same time that they rolled out the Wi-Fi, the cell phones.
The
They,
hepat
they
yeah,
pumped up the vaccine.
they started giving hepatitis B vaccines at birth in 1991. Yeah.
So we have to understand that this is an agenda to destroy the creatures. I'm going to not even call them people. The creatures that control the medical establishment are seeking to destroy. That is their absolute purpose for existence, is to destroy. And they do it in multiple ways, but through the medical establishment is a very important way that they are hurting people and children. I wanted to try to find these pictures so that you could see growth retardation. I can't find them. It's such a bummer. You could see the damage being done through
So,
one exposure.
so technically, they could obtain the information that is needed from a medical perspective from a much lower hertz rate and less strength and also a shorter period of time, correct?
What you're going to find, Dr. T, is that this technology is having exactly zero impact on the outcome of the children. It has no benefit. Study after study after study after study, and I've got them in my book, and I've quoted them in my book, right in the text. Okay, no benefit. There is no benefit to this technology. They're not finding anything that's going to help the outcome of the children. And
Then
this has also been known
this is
that,
just a so pervasive and such a routine part um of medical of birthing care of once you
what we call care, prenatal care. It's a prenatal assault. Forgive me for being like, I have zero tolerance left. You know, people need to know that they're trying to cause harm. So if I can show you, this is the top picture here are cells, normal, normal cells. This is what they look like after an exposure to ultrasound.
what page is that in your book?
82,
On page 82. So for
82.
the listeners, because only the listeners aren't going to be able to see the videos and see the pictures, only the people that watch this as a podcast and not just as a
Okay. Mhm.
verbal interview. So when you get the book, which I hope everybody will, or at least make sure that your local libraries carry it because it's a hefty book. And I think every OB-GYN and every healthcare provider that takes care of babies should take a look at this and to understand what has become part of the normal birthing process. Years ago, and I think I still have this outline on my computer. I was going to I was so appalled by all the things that happen to newborn babies. And I've said it many times on broadcast. It's like it's amazing that any of them are born alive and live to grow at all. Because I wrote this outline of this book I was going to write, but I could never write the book because it was so dark. And it was so like I couldn't, the only good outcome I could come out with at the end was home birthing, no antibiotics, no injections, let the birth do what it was supposed to do. And the title of it was going to be What We Do to Newborns. How does anyone survive? And you start from the time of in vitro fertilization, and then you do things like amniocentesis and then all of the ultrasounds and all the different things that are done in injecting the mother with vaccines and then the birthing process. It was everything that they do from conception until 18 years of age is just damaging and destroying to that human. And it's all done under the happy smile. If you go to the CDC website, all the happy smiling faces of taking good care of these babies because we're injecting them with poisons and we're beating them up with all this ultrasound even before they're born. And so I couldn't bring myself to write it because it was so dark. But you have addressed one very important dark thing with exposing this dark side of this ultrasound. It's really important.
In my birth trauma book, I've also addressed the protocols of hospital birth, point by point, from induction of labor to the use of Pitocin to the amniotomy and the epidural, the C-section, the circumcision, the clamping and cutting of the umbilical cord. Okay, every single thing that these people do is intended and does cause harm. There are no benefits to any of it, not a single thing, not one thing that they're doing.
Well, when you think about it, humans have been on the planet for a long time, long before we had hospital-based births where we did all these traumatic interventions, like you said,
Mhm.
for many years. And so it's really a very very dark, bad thing that they do, but this is a good place for people to take a deep breath, to think about all of the different things that happen to children from the point of conception, sometimes even preconception, with the in vitro fertilization and all the
Horrid. It's so dark.
it's a good place for us to take a short station break right here. So hold that thought. We're going to hear from our sponsors for AmericaOutloud.news. America Out Loud Radio plays the Tenpenny Files on iHeartRadio Network every day, Monday through Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern. You can listen anywhere in the world by going to AmericaOutloud.news and listening through their media player. Or you can listen on any of your favorite podcast platforms, such as Spotify, Pandora, Apple, iTunes, TuneIn, iHeart Virtual Studio, and the easiest place I think to find all of the interviews that I do, even though we also promote them on X, Rumble, and on Instagram, is to go to my website, which is drtenpenny.com, hover over the podcast tab, and then when you scroll down just a little bit, you will find a tab that says all podcasts. Click there. You will see icons and descriptions of every podcast that we've done. We also post them on my Substacks. So because there's so many great books and so many great documentaries and so little time to read and to watch in our busy lives, this show's meant to maximize your time and jumpstart your interest. We are going to show you a couple of great messages from our sponsors. We hope that you will take them seriously because purchasing items from them will support America Out Loud. It also supports our show and keeps us on the air. So we will be right back in just a short 2 minutes and to hear more from Jeanice Barcelo about her important book, The Dark Side of Prenatal Ultrasound, the only book that exposes the dangers of ultrasonic technologies. Sit tight, we will be right back. Zeolite is a detox spray. We work specifically with a company called Touchstone Essentials. They are an incredible company. We've been working with them now for several years. And zeolite is a mineral that goes through your body like a one-way basket. It will clean out heavy metals such as arsenic and mercury, aluminum, cadmium, and it hooks onto those metals from a one-way perspective. So once it's bound, it goes out through your urine or your stools and doesn't get redeposited in other places. Everybody needs to have a detox product in their life, and this one is so easy to use and it's so safe. You can take it when you're pregnant, you can take it when you're nursing, you can give it to little children, you can even give it to infants, and quite frankly, I give it to my dog. I actually put a little bit of the zeolite in his water because until we all stop living in a toxic world, we all need to get some of those extra toxicities out, the heavy metals, the persistent organic pollutants, the things that are floating through the air, the different things that we come in touch with in our environment. And we are a big fan of zeolite from Touchstone Essentials. We've been a big fan of their products for several years. Go to drtenpenny.com/detox to get your first bottle of zeolite spray for $50 off.
Well, only when the government bows to the people will America become great again. This is Malcolm Out Loud here. Join me in pushing back against censorship, my fellow Americans. Right at the top of AmericaOutloud.news are the words: many voices, one freedom, united in the First Amendment. Now is our time, my fellow Americans. AmericaOutloud.news, liberty and justice for all.
Well, welcome back, everyone. We thank you so much for being here today to listen to this important discussion about this incredible book, The Dark Side of Prenatal Ultrasound. Let me tell you just a little bit more about today's guest. Jeanice Barcelo is an author, educator, researcher, and child advocate dedicated to exposing the dark side of the medical establishment, especially what they do to children. Through public appearances and radio shows, Jeanice has lectured extensively on this important topic, and she's even created a 20-week parenting program designed to alter her approach towards pregnancy and birth. Her goal is to end prenatal and birth trauma so children can arrive safely and with love. We'll have that link in our show notes below because it's very important. She also offers a course designed specifically for men. Boy, these are really great products, Jeanice. Thank you. Welcome back to the show. Thank you so much for dedicating your life to this very important topic.
Yeah, I'm so glad. so glad to be here. I know what you said is true about how dark this information is and how hard it is to talk about this. But we just can't not look anymore. We have to be able to see this in order to protect the children. The other big problem is that families are breaking down. When childbirth should be the culmination and fulfillment of love, right? Two people bringing their love into eternity through the creation of life. And when it's traumatic, this is going to interfere with the love in the family. The bonding is going to break down. And if the father can't protect the mother and the baby, the mother won't trust the father. This is all on a very unconscious level. And it's the beginning of the end for the marriage if this happens. So we have the medical establishment also interfering with the capacity for human love to endure and for the fulfillment of human love to actually happen on this earth. They don't like love. Love is the furthest thing from what they are. And it's one of the greatest things for them to interfere with. And that the birth process is very much a part of that interference.
Your book has received a considerable amount of blowback by the gynecology, by American College, by ACOG, which is the American College of Gynecologists and Obstetrics. Because, and I find it really hard for them to put forth any sort of an argument because your book has more than 1,700 references from mainstream medical journals and mainstream scientific journals. So I could see them like trying to blow back like one study, but you've got 1,700, more than 1,700 documented in
1800 plus.
your response to this organization and to physicians who want to poo-poo all the research you brought forth.
This is my response, and this is why I took the time to do it, because there are 200 pages of citations in this book, meticulously documented. There are also quotes, direct quotes out of these studies in the book. They cannot argue with this. And I wrote the book in this way specifically so that they have no argument. I know exactly what I'm talking about. I've done the research, I've documented it, and there's nothing they can say except, attack my character, call me an anti-Semite or whatever, whatever nonsense. That's the biggest argument they have right now, okay? That's what they do is they'll attack somebody's character when they can't contradict the information that's coming forward.
I know that
And they can't. They have no argument because it's all documented.
I was at a Christian conference, a seminar in Washington, D.C., and the name of it was a panel that's been put forward to look at religious rights in this country, particularly Christian rights. And I was there just a couple of weeks ago. One of the people on the panel was an OB-GYN who has been in practice for 40 years. And she's also in academia. And she said the young kids that are coming through right now, they're being told by their attending physicians, when you're a third year medical student, that's when you start going out and doing all these different rotations, getting exposure and also trying to figure out what subspecialty you want to go into. And when they go to do their obstetrics one, they are told up front by their attending physicians, if you're not going to be willing to do abortions, don't go into obstetrics. So when you talk about the evilness that is pervasive inside of this industry, I really feel like you're spot on.
Yeah, when I wrote in my birth trauma book also about the mind control of medical students, because the medical school is a process of sleep deprivation, sun deprivation, nutrition deprivation. These students are forced to do extremely abusive things like veterinary students are forced to torture dogs, basically, to put them. I interviewed somebody in the birth trauma book who told me, we had to go to this class about learned helplessness where they put a dog in a tank of water and make it swim and swim. And if it goes to the edge, it gets electroshocked. So it can't save its own life. And when it's ready to give up, they'll pull it out and then put it back in the next day. And the students are forced to do these things, and they're forced to do things like circumcision, like cutting off the most sensitive part of an infant baby's penis without anesthetic. The baby is being genitally tortured for no medical reason whatsoever. There are zero medical benefits to cutting off a healthy body part, no matter what lies these people come up with, and they are professional liars. Okay, they lie as easy as they breathe. Okay, there are no medical benefits to this. This is trauma-based mind control torture of infants as they are in the womb and as they are emerging out of the womb. They are being initiated into this, what I'm going to call a Luciferian reality. Hospitals are Luciferian temples of the occult. They're filled with rituals that are very dark and that kill people and cause immense pain and suffering and poisoning and the slow parasiting of their wealth before they die. That's really the system.
It's really, we stepped a long ways away from the Hippocratic Oath, first do no harm.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
In your book, The Dark Side of Prenatal Ultrasound, you talk about the significant downsides of Pitocin induced used to induce labor. And I didn't know this until I read your book. That is a derivative of oxytocin, that is the chemical that's released during an orgasm so that you feel, the uplifting that you do. And this medication is used traumatically on infants. And I've heard so many stories, Jeanice, over the years. I'm sure you've heard dozens or hundreds more than I have of people that they induced labor because they had to get this over with and they had to get this baby out because the doctor was going on vacation tomorrow.
Right, right.
They didn't want to hurry the process. They just would, we've done Pitocin for a couple hours. Baby's not coming out. We're just going to have a C-section because I've got a plane to catch in a couple hours.
What they're doing is inducing a premature birth.
Exactly.
Okay, the medical establishment is actually causing at least 25% of the premature births through the induction of labor. And in Pitocin in particular, it's not a derivative of oxytocin, it's a synthetic mimicker. It's a synthetic mimicker of natural oxytocin, which is the hormone of human love and bonding. Right, it's the hormone that makes for the letdown of breast milk. It's the hormone that allows for the mother to bond with her baby. It's the hormone that will just permeate the whole room, mother, father, child, when there's no trauma involved, to bond that family together. And it's a very important hormone. When you put that fake stuff into the mother's body, this synthetic poison, it tricks her brain so that the body won't produce natural oxytocin, you see, and so bonding will be interfered with, breastfeeding will be interfered with, the ability to love, like the baby's oxytocin receptor sites can be damaged for life because of this drug, which means they're going to have a hard time being able to manifest love in their lives. And this is epidemic right now, a lack of love between parents and children, and also for the children to be able to create love in their lives. And this drug has a very, very, very negative influence on love. That's the point. They'll try to get it into the body even after the baby's born. Like, oh, we need to put it in so you can deliver the placenta. Like, they just want to get this drug to interfere with love, with breastfeeding, with bonding.
I'm not so sure that there is any intentional thought about that. As a physician, I've done a lot of
People that control this system, believe me,
the people that are actually administering it. It's just part of a protocol. And
they don't know.
they don't know. And it's just part of this is what we do. This is like, it's sort of like the vaccine schedule. This is the schedule. This is how we give it. We give this at birth, at 2, 4, and 6 months. And they don't give any additional thought to what is,
They're,
am I doing? Why am I doing this at all?
they're
So
robots. They are mind control. Seriously, they're like AI, right? Doing what they've been programmed to do without asking questions, like you say.
Yeah, they don't ask the questions. And so here's my question to you is, people that are hearing this will probably be at a very minimum kind of dismayed, but also maybe shocked. And I heard this story for years. They always say, well, I really like my doctor. And I've always said, that's there's a difference between personality and performance. Liking your doctor is personality. You like their personality, but what they're doing to you and your child is performance, and you don't have to like any of that. If there's someone who's listening to this who is pregnant, or is trying to get pregnant, or is a grandparent and they know about this, what would your advice to them be?
Honestly, my advice would be avoid the medical establishment like the plague. Look for a midwife. Do your homework about home birth. Look for a midwife. There's two different kinds of midwives in the United States. There's certified nurse midwives that are trained medically, and there's certified professional midwives that are really trained to do home birth. Okay, I would avoid the CNMs if I could and go for a CPM, certified professional midwife, and do what's necessary to stay out of their system, to keep your children. I want to say something else about Pitocin because this drug creates such intense contractions, that the mother then begs for the epidural because these contractions come like one after another, after another, after another, with no rest in between. That's not natural. That's not what happens in a natural birth. So the mother begs for the epidural, and then she can't move or help her baby get born. But also the baby is being crushed by the contractions because the uterus turns into a trash compactor, basically smashing the baby and cutting off the oxygen supply, which causes further brain damage. You see, there's so much brain damage happening through all of the protocols that they're using. So this is why I recommend avoiding them, because we're not going to find anything good there. This is very hard for people to take in. Women will tend to give birth the way they were born. So if they were born in a hospital, the likelihood that the first birth will happen in a hospital is very high. And if they were traumatized during their birth, which is very likely if they were born in a hospital, they may recreate the trauma during the birth of their children. So this is something to consider if you're going to do a home birth, to look into your own birth. This goes for the fathers too, who've been extensively traumatized through things like circumcision. Okay, what we want to try to avoid is bringing our birth trauma into the birth field if we're going to do a home birth, to try to seek to heal our birth trauma even before conception, ideally. But when we become pregnant, it's going to become really important to try to heal birth trauma so that there's no traumatic repetition. Trauma is insidious, it can repeat.
So tell us a little bit about your 20-week parenting program that you created.
So that program is designed to take people from preconception through conscious parenting. Okay, so in the preconception phase, we would want to look into our birth trauma and heal our birth trauma. We'd want to even understand the difference between sex and love so that we can choose a beloved who is really right for us on the same spiritual path with similar visions for the future, similar goals, and not be attracted through carnal impulse, which is our culture really pushes pornographic attraction. And this is a big problem because we end up in false unions. So we don't want to create children in a false union. That causes problems, obviously, and divorce. So we want to look at all that preconception and create a space of love for these children to be conceived and gestated and birthed in. Okay, when we've got that space of love in place and the other things I just talked about, then we consciously conceive the child rather than, the way I was conceived is very haphazardly in the back seat of a car. at a drive-in movie theater, and this is not uncommon for people to be conceived as a side effect of fleshy gratification. And then we're not wanted. We're in wombs where we're not wanted, which creates prenatal trauma, a sense of I'm not lovable and I'll never be loved. And that causes pain, potentially throughout life. We have to address all of this, okay? We have to address the preparation phase, what's happened to us. Is there prenatal trauma? Is there conception trauma? Is there birth trauma? Let's heal that. Let's take a look at what's happening with what's called prenatal care. Let's take a look at what's happening with hospital birth. Let's take a look at the possibilities with home birth. What does it mean to be a conscious parent? What does that mean? We have to take a look at, are we using wireless devices around our children? Are we using them while we're pregnant? Are we vaccinating our children? Are we circumcising our children? If we want to be a conscious parent and bring children here in the image of God, instead of the dark side influencing them, we have to look at all of these things before we give birth, so that the children can come in the way that God designed the children to come in. You see, it's being interfered with. For example, God does not create a magnificent male penis with the foreskin adhered to the glands to protect the very vulnerable glands, only to turn around and tell people to cut it off. You see, that's God's adversary. And we need to see that. God didn't say cut it off. Some other entities said that. And we thought that was God. We made a mistake. We've made a lot of mistakes because we're under mind control. And the birth process we've been through is part of that mind control process. It's part of how they put us under a spell, that we believe utter nonsense, that ultrasound is safe. It just replaced x-rays. That's all. And it's worse. It's worse than x-rays because these scans are long sometimes and create massive amounts of heat and massive amounts of deformations. Like I just saw another young man at the laundromat yesterday with a deformed forearm and hand. And I said to him, did that happen to you before you were born, or was it from an injury? And he said, I was born like this. I said, ultrasound did that. I see these children, these young adults all the time with these digit deformations. This is radiation-induced damage.
So tell us also about your courses designed specifically for men. And I want you to tell people where they can log in and get these courses too.
Okay. In the parenting program, there are 3 2-hour classes on the father's role during the childbearing year. And I also have a 3-part series just for men, okay, which is designed to help them understand their part in creating the space of love, clearing their birth trauma, okay, protecting their wife and children so that they're not exposed to ultrasound, okay, so that they're not exposed to vaccinations. There's a series of books called the Ringing Cedars books, and these books taught me that the mother is responsible for the development of the physical body of the baby, and the father is responsible for the spiritual development of the child. And this should be happening prenatally, that the father is transmitting his conscious awareness of what's happening in this world and his connection to God, to his developing child, and visioning a future for his developing child where the child is one with God, with creation, where the child has not lost its contact with God or creation like all of us have. We've been so traumatized that we don't even understand God. Like we believe that God wants us to cut off the foreskin. We're lost we're lost in a realm of illusion and deception that separates us from even understanding the true nature of God. And we want our children to be able to overcome that, to not come in that way, to maintain the connection with the divine mind.
Well, we've only got about 2 minutes left in our time here today. Where can people find these courses if they want to take them?
Please go to my website at birth, of a new earth.com. That's where my courses are. That's where my books are, birthofanewearth.com. I've also got another website called Radiation Dangers with an S.com, where you can find a ton of information about that particular topic. And I've got a Substack, JeaniceBarcelo.substack.com, where I'm often putting out, radical information that most people don't talk about. It is hard, and I apologize. My intention is never to cause pain. I'm really sharing this from a place of love and wanting to restore love on this earth. But we have to address the darkness because it's pervasive, and we can't allow it to continue. We have to stop what we're doing.
Denise, thank you for that. And all those links will be down in the show note for everybody. And we barely even talked about the ultrasound. We talked about a lot of emotional sort of things and sort of peripheral things that have to do with birth. So I'd like to have you come back and really focus on the next session we have together, really about ultrasound and what it can do and why we should avoid it. So I want to thank you for being with us here today. I want to thank all of our listeners for being here with us today. Part of this show is to introduce radical ideas and give you a place to start and a place to think. And this is a nearly 500-page book with over 1,800 references. So you've got a really great place to start with this. So one of the places that we put all of our books from all of our guests on the similar place at bookstore.drtenpenny.com, bookstore.drtenpenny.com, which makes it really easy for any time that you've listened to anybody on our show that you can go there and get that. So with that, we're short on time, so we're going to close out for today. Thank everybody for being here. And we're going to have a follow-up conversation with more detailed information about the dark side of ultrasound. We'll see you here tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Time on AmericaOutloud.news and iHeartRadio. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. Goodbye and God.
Thank you. Thank you.